Anybody, anywhere,
It's time to take command with former NFL tight end Logan Paulsen.
This pass caught by Paulsen, the tight end.
And from 106.7 The Fan, Grant Paulsen.
Welcome into Take Command. You can watch the show on YouTube, 106.7 The Fan, Team 980 pages. And of course, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review to this podcast. Wherever you get your audio, it means a lot. We always ask that you send it to a friend or two who hasn't listened before. It certainly helps us out. Logan Paulsen played in the NFL for a decade. At one point in time, was one of the longest tenured players on the Redskins. I'm Grant Paulsen. You can listen to me from 2 to 6:30 every day on 106.7 The Fan in D.C. Logan, next up, the Detroit Lions. It's the preview pod, and things do not get easier for a Washington team that's lost 4 in a row and 3 in a row by more than 20 points. Here comes one of the better teams in the NFC and a club that they eviscerated in the playoffs last year when Jaden Daniels put the team on his back and played one of his best games of the year. And you know Detroit coming off of a divisional loss, and with that memory from last January when they were eliminated after a bye as the 1 seed, is going to have some added venom toward Washington and Landover.
Yeah, man, I think you said that perfectly. The venom is the thing I'm most concerned about. Obviously Detroit's a really good squad. They're a good roster. We're going to talk about them in more detail, but I think the emotional element of this game is going to be absolutely huge. Dan Campbell is an emotional guy. He's kind of got the raw thing down to a science. They're coming off of a bad loss in the division. I'm very positive the memory of last year's playoff game is so at the forefront of his mind. The Commanders have a big, tall task ahead of them anyway, just from an X's and O's and schematic personnel standpoint. But I think the emotional weight of this game is also something that's going to be a huge factor.
Dan Campbell's one of these guys. I don't think this would be the case for most coaches, but to your point, it just feels like he's that dude who holds a grudge. Yeah. Who's going to be showing every morning at the start of the meeting all the highlights from the playoff game. Like, he just seems to me like a dude at his desk where he turns around before he goes home every night, and right before he turns off the lights, he throws a dart at a board at Dan Quinn or something. He's just that guy. He's from 50 years ago. He's a kneecap eater. And there's a lot of coaches where I do too. I didn't initially when he was hired. I thought he was a goof, but I completely undervalued his acumen, and he's fantastic. And I raised my hand to say I was completely wrong about that hire. He's one of my favorite coaches in the league now. But there are plenty of coaches where I don't think they would take personally the playoff loss of a year ago. And it wouldn't matter on Sunday. And I do feel like if he gets a chance, he's going to do everything he can to avenge it. Am I wrong about this guy?
We've had conversations off air where, I've kind of opened up about my thoughts on this. And that's something I'm definitely concerned about for sure, is him just, doing the Dan Campbell thing. When they played the Bears earlier this year, you could tell there was a personal undertone to that game with the Ben Johnson leaving, all that kind of stuff. And they ran that score. There's no other way they ran the score up. You know what I mean? And so when you got a guy like that, who, again, I love his approach. I love his passion. He's going to be passionate in this game, and passionate people do crazy stuff. So that's a big concern for me moving forward into this game.
That's a kind way to put it, man. Call me passionate, brother. That's a friendly way to do it, Logan. That's such a nice way to say I'm a maniac and diabolical, man.
I love it. Dude, I'll be watching something with my son. We'll be watching Instagram or something, and he'll come on, and I just that speech where he talks about taking another team into deep water. That resonates with me so acutely. My skin is tingling right now just thinking about that feeling of taking someone where they don't want to be, where they've never been, is fantastic. And the fact that he has got that whole team playing that way, oh man, it gets me so juiced up. But yeah, again, that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a team. There was a clip. I want to say it was in the Minnesota game, and I think this perfectly encapsulates what they do. Sam Laporta catches this beautiful seam route versus cover 2, right? Boom. He kind of hits the safety. He's rumbling, bumbling, stumbling, and I'll be darned if every single receiver, so Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, these high-paid, high-profile guys are in the shot pushing the pile, and then Jahmyr Gibbs is sprinting and smashing to this pile. We're talking 30 to 40 yards down the field. And when you've got your stars playing that way, and when they come with this kind of passion, like it starts with head coach and it shows up. And so again, like the maniac element of this is definitely a big storyline for me going into the game. So I hope Washington's ready for it.
Yeah, I do too. It's a big matchup, and it's one where you're going to have to just knuckle up a little bit here, right? And throw some fists, if you will. You're going to have to drop the gloves because they're going to come at you. You're in the bar, and they're swinging stools, and you just got to be ready to go. I think there's no doubt about that.
It was funny when we were getting ready for this show. I'm glad you said that. Sorry to cut you off, but we were getting ready for this show, and I was kind of thinking about it like, what does this come down to? And we're going to talk about some specific plays here in a second, but ultimately it's one of these games where you just got to put your mouthpiece in, get that wrist tape extra tight, make sure all your digits are taped up, and just be ready to hold a gap and be ready to move a dude off a spot. Like that's what this game's going to be. And like, hopefully the Commanders are ready to do that.
So I want to start with the Washington defense, the Detroit defense and the Washington offense, because I think there's a lot more to chew on with the Detroit offense and what they are compared to 1 year ago. So we'll do that in our longer segment coming up. But the Lions defensively, this is actually the side of the ball where they've improved this year. Yeah. And they're healthier, first of all, but they're playing way better. They've added some pieces, and I think they have a stud defensive coordinator who's becoming a hot coaching name already as a very young guy in Kelvin Shepard. His press conferences, if you have not seen them, are must-see. He is incredible at answering questions very pointedly. He doesn't mind calling players out and he gives you the real, so to speak. And like, it's so refreshing and awesome. But like how he's talking to players in the locker room is basically how he does his pressers. He's being linked to the LSU job potentially already. Like, people love this guy. But it's not just a demeanor thing. This is not like Joe Witt just cutting promos on day one. Like, the scheme and the performance is backing it up now. When you look at some of the numbers defensively, this was the number 27 defense in the NFL last year. They were 22nd against the run and the pass. This year, Logan, right now coming into this game, they're the number 8 defense in the league. They're number 9 against the pass. They're number 13 against the run. They're top 5 at picking quarterbacks off. They're top 4 at getting sacks. He has done a whale of a job. And when you watch them, they're aggressive, they're fast, they're violent. It's kind of everything you dream about as a fan.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what you hit the nail perfectly on the head there. Like, they're physical, fast, and violent. And like, when you want to talk defensive football, ultimately, like, that's what you're trying to get to. Is you're trying to get to 11 guys that look like they want to kill somebody on the field. It's like a controlled chaos, right? You've got, Brian Branch, who I can't get enough of watching that dude play football. Like, he is physical, he's violent, he can cover, he's got a good feel for the ball when it's in the air. Jack Campbell is this big, 6'5", 250-pound middle linebacker who can run, he can hit, he's tackling well. Aiden Hutchinson needs no introduction in terms of how he's been playing. Alex Anzalone. And I do think, like, when you go to like PFF, for example, you're going to see a lot of kind of poor grades in the secondary. And to me, it's because they are going to play man coverage and challenge you in a way that is so unique in the NFL. Like, the amount of man coverage, I don't know what it is. It feels like they play man coverage every snap. Like, that's kind of what, like, when you're watching the film, you're like, they're in man. Here's zero. Here's single high, one plug. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, damn, like, they are coming for your face every single rep. And I think that, like you're talking about, that personality of the defensive coordinator jumps out, and it makes total sense as to why they're playing that aggressively. So, man, like, this is interesting, because if we were prepping for this team and everyone was healthy, I'd be like, this is awesome. This is the easiest game plan we've ever done, because they're going to be in man. What are our man beaters? What are our zero beaters? And let's make sure we let it rock and roll. If you look at Minnesota, I thought they had a great plan for all the man they were going to get. The problem, I think, that I'm having a hard time like negotiating and navigating is we've played a bunch of teams who are cover 3 teams that have played a little bit more man. This team lives and dies with the sword of man coverage. Like, this is who they are. So they know every little detail. They know every little leverage. So my question to you, Grant, and to the fan base is, like, is there somebody on this team that we can look to and say, that's the guy that can win versus man-to-man coverage versus a team that does it a lot? How is our protection plan versus this pressure that they're going to bring on first, second down, third down? They're bringing it all the time. And again, over the past couple of weeks, that's the big concerning factor to me, is like, this team does this. They do this all the time. What is our plan to beat this with personnel on the perimeter that is, again, a little bit banged up?
I don't consistently think you've got anybody right now who fits that bill, who's going to win in man regularly against Detroit's personnel. I always come back to, and this is just from conversations when teams were shorter on personnel that I covered over the years, that's where scheme's going to have to matter a ton, and trying to get guys into space. It might mean going against type a little bit. They've gotten so much now into just a straight drop back game where maybe this is the week where you got to mix it up a little bit, and you get under center and you run some boots and you try to get the defense going in one direction and you get someone in the flat the other way. I don't know if you could just line up, do what you've been doing, and get guys open routinely. There's going to be a few plays for sure, but it's a really, really hard way to envision them consistently moving the ball and scoring points the way that the matchup looks. One thing that I find impressive about Detroit, and it sounds like we're, just kissing Detroit's butt here, but they do a lot of things well, is, and this is going to be something Washington's got to, I like your word, negotiate. They don't miss tackles. Okay. This to me is, when you watch this team, if you guys go back and watch their games, this is what it looks like. When there's a few guys like Aiden Hutchinson who we'll get to who are special, but it's mostly, to me, just like a well-coached team that this is what happens when everyone's where they're supposed to be and you don't miss tackles and you play aggressive football. I'm going to back this up with numbers. This is not just an anecdote. They are right now league low at missed tackle rate, single-digit percentage point of the time they miss a tackle. And they've had the fewest yards allowed after missed tackles in the league. They went into last week with something like 186 yards after missed tackles. I mean, Washington's had games this year that have been over 100 in that stat. And so my point is just that I think they get you to the ground where you catch the ball. It's a catch and fall kind of operation. So I think this is the most important game for Cliff that we've seen this year in terms of navigating that. And I don't think there's going to be a whole lot after the catch, playmakers making plays.
Dude, I totally agree. And this is one of those things where it's like the features of Cliff's offense that make it good, the hurry up, the simplicity, the ability to go fast, the ability to give the quarterback the flexibility at the line of scrimmage. It feels like we've kind of pared that back a little bit. Do we get into more condensed formations? Do we get into more stacks? Do we get into more bunches? Is there a little bit more motion in this game? Because again, like you're talking about, part of the thing that makes Cliff's offense good is we're going fast to make simple coverage contours so that we can find good matchups and select those and win them, right? When you lose some of the horses on the perimeter, that tool becomes a little bit less effective. So Cliff's a really smart dude, man. I've been very privileged to talk to him a couple times briefly about some high-level football stuff, and he understands the value of what he does. He also understands the value of what a Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay do. So is this the week where, I'm not saying that it's all the time, but can we get in a bunch? Can we create some picks? Can we create some rubs? Can we use some motion to kind of designate what kind of coverage they're in pre-snap for the quarterback? I think you're going to need to use more tools, basically, right, in this week specifically, because, and it's not an indictment of Cliff's offense. It's just the things that make it good are less effective because Terry's not out there. Noah Brown's not out there. Debo in the slot would be excellent in this game, but he's probably going to have to play more on the perimeter. So you're really relying on Traylon Burks and Matt Moore to win versus some pretty good coverage players on the perimeter. And I'm not sure that's the solution. Obviously, Zach Ertz is going to eat and do his thing versus man-to-man coverage, and I think you could run a portion of the offense through that. But I think when you look at Brian Branch, he's a great cover safety. So is there anything that we can do schematically, like you're talking about, to kind of tip the deck into our guys' favor? And again, this is the thing that I hope hopefully this show provides to listeners is these solutions. We can talk about, hey, they got to beat man coverage, but the way you do it is comprehensive and vast depending on who you have. So when you watch Minnesota, they're out there, they have a great protection plan, they have a couple plays versus zero that are really good, but ultimately you have Justin Jefferson and Addison on the perimeter who can win versus man-to-man coverage, and the offensive line holds up. McCarthy makes a great play versus man coverage where he throws the ball to a spot, puts a ton of air on the football, and you get a catch inside the low red. Like, those are the types of plays that elevate an offense. But how, as a coordinator, do we say we don't have Justin Jefferson, we don't have Addison? How do we find ways to get our guys into space? And again, I think the other thing too is put a little bit of a ceiling on this defense, right? Get those guys to back up, get those safeties to back up. Those are the things that you got to watch for in this game. And this is what I enjoy about my job so much, is like, I have some thoughts, but it's cool to see what really smart people like Cliff come up with in these moments to elevate and put the offense in the best position to be successful.
One other thing I'd say too, when you asked me kind of pointedly, who wins in man, or how do they do it against this defense? And, I'm not the one to answer that question. There's smarter people, including you, to do that. But here's one thing I would say. When I went back and watched some of the explosives against this team, they were on plays that were extended by quarterbacks.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
So this is also this is not easy, but this is like a Marcus Mariota assignment in a sense too. Because I'm going to sit here and say you can't hold the ball. Time to throw's got to be fairly low. Jared Goff had the lowest TTT of his season last year and still got pressured, last week rather, like 46% of the time. We're going to get to Aiden Hutchinson in a second, but he's a defensive player of the year caliber. Like, maybe he's not Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, but he's having like that type of impact a lot of weeks.
Pretty close, man.
He's on that level in a sense. And so I'm saying get the ball out. But yet there's going to be plays where if you tell me they hit on 3 throws of 25 or more, I'm going to bet you 2 of them were off schedule. He extends and kind of out of the pocket. That's what happened when they dealt with the Ravens and Baltimore scored 30, when they lost to the Chiefs and the Chiefs scored 30. Baker couldn't do it, and they scored 9 on him. The Browns couldn't get that done. They scored 10. Like, that's been a binary difference to me too against this team.
Well, and I think the thing you look at last week is I think Cliff, just in Seattle, like, they understood that front for Seattle was really good. And what did they come out doing? They came out trying to move the pocket, extend, get guys open down the field with Jaden on the perimeter. And I think this is the interesting kind of chess match is Seattle, I felt like, kind of knew that was going to be the solution, or knew it was going to be part of the game plan. And they just started attacking the quarterback, right? And we couldn't maximize that. So, what do you do? Do you take that same principle and say, like, let's have John Bates short motion, let's try to pin that guy, let's get Mariota to the perimeter, let him see the ball down the field a little bit more, kind of find ways to schematically extend those moments as opposed to relying on Marcus Mariota to do it himself. So there are some things that I'm curious to see if they do in terms of, like, how do they extend the play? How do they make sure that they can get the football down the field? And that's going to kind of require a little bit of a departure from what we've seen the last couple of weeks. But I do think that they have shown plays at times that are really good in this area. And, like, do you just get to more of that stuff? And I think the other thing that's going to be important is, like, when you look at that Minnesota game, Minnesota got after their butts a little bit in the run game. You know what I'm saying? Like, they ran a couple powers, couple traps, couple like outside zone perimeter runs, and Mason's getting downhill nice and square and moving piles and finding explosive chunks that way. Like, can you do that? Because I will say, like, they're good, Grant. Like, there's no doubt about it. You mentioned like how they are kind of better than the sum of their parts, so to speak. But I do think that, like, their defensive tackles specifically have not played as well. Like McNeil, for example, is kind of having what I would say like a down year for him in terms of stopping the run. He's a bigger guy. He's supposed to stop the run. Struggling with that. DJ Reader's a good player, but hasn't been playing as consistently. So can you exploit that? Can you lean on him a little bit and say, hey, like, then play action pass works a little bit better? Like, all of those things, like, need to come to the forefront. Extending the play, running the football, put this team in a good position to score some points.
Owen McNeil is a 3rd-round pick out of NC State. He's 310 pounds. He'll be wearing number 54, very untraditional defensive tackle number, smack dab in the middle of the line of scrimmage if you're looking for him. In the secondary, you've highlighted Brian Branch a lot, who's a special player. I remember there was some talk, Washington had been linked to him in the draft at one point in time and seemed to really like him. They've also got 2 guys now. At corner, they've got ascending players. Terrion Arnold had a great pick in trail coverage last week. Made an athletic play. Amik Robertson's playing outside way more this year than he did last year. He's responded very well. I know Arnold's going to be on the injury report this week, as will Kirby Joseph, their free safety. So they've got some injuries on both sides of the ball. We're going to talk about the other side for the Lions, where they could be without both tackles this week as well. But we got to hit on Aiden Hutchinson real quick, because if you're highlighting players on this defense, like, they run base more than almost anybody in the league, 2 times as much as I think a lot of other teams do. And they get their linebackers on the field with Alex Anzalone, who can move around. Jack Campbell, who they drafted in the first round, coming downhill is a beast. But their defense is an Aiden Hutchinson show. I mean, this was the top 5 pick a couple years ago. A lot of people thought he should have gone to 1-1. He went number 2 overall and stayed in Michigan. And Logan, the numbers are crazy. He's leading the NFL with 46 pressures right now. He had 7 against the Vikings last week. In the fourth quarter, he's far and away the best pass rusher in the league statistically. If you look at pressure percentage, win rate, he turns up the heat. I love guys like Vaughn was like this throughout his career, where you're a finisher, you're a closer. And Hutchinson, after last week is kind of coming in, feeling it on a heater right now, closing in on double-digit sacks already on the season. What's the plan against him? Because they're coming off of their worst pass pro game in a couple seasons. How do they clean that up with Hutchinson in town?
Yeah, I mean, I will say, last week I think was a little bit of an anomaly in terms of how good the Seattle front was across the board. You've got 4 guys at least, probably 5 or 6 with some depth pass rushers that can really rush the passer and do some things that are really impressive. And so I will say with Detroit, they have some talented pieces, no doubt. But I do think when you look at it, it's kind of the Aiden Hutchinson. So it reminds me a little bit, and this is going to sound like a pejorative comparison, but compared to the Las Vegas Raiders, it feels a little bit like that, where there are some good pieces, but it's really like Aiden Hutchinson and friends. And obviously they do blitz a little bit more, right, than Las Vegas does. But to me, when it's one guy, right, even though he's very, very good, he's very, very talented, it's a little bit easier to negotiate and manage that skill set. So, we can have chip help, we can work slide help. And I think when you look at how Cliff handled Max Crosby, I would do something similar, right? We're going to run the football, we're going to play action pass, we're going to bring in extra help for our tackles, our right tackle specifically, and make sure that he doesn't wreck the game for us. Because I think the other thing too, the Max Crosby comparison feels very apropos, is he plays his face off, man. Talk about a Dan Campbell guy, talk about Brian Branch, Jack Campbell. Those guys play so hard, you know what I mean? And he's going to be relentless. So he's going to play the run hard. He's physical, and he's a little bit different than kind of these other elite pass rushers that you're talking about, because he's 6'7", he's 275. He's a big human, right? So his impact on the game is going to be felt, no doubt. But I do think because it's kind of like him, there are some things you could do. Now, as they get into the third down pressure stuff, it's going to be harder to do that, because every single team in the NFL that's got a defense that's worth a damn, they do a good job of creating one-on-ones for them, right? So because you can't help if we got a back in the backfield, we can't get chip help because the back's got to block the linebacker blitzing to the offensive left. So there are going to be times where you get one-on-ones and you just got to kind of put your big boy pants on and make it happen. But on those other downs, what can Cliff do schematically? Here's that word again, schematically, to elevate and make sure that we're not getting our face kicked in by Aiden Hutchinson.
He's one of these guys where, to me, I go into the game and I go, he can't beat me. I cannot let him take over the game. Longtime Redskins fans will remember this game against the Chiefs 15 years ago. In fact, Santana, your boy, caught a screen pass for 78 yards and a touchdown in the game. But Jared Allen had 4 sacks and 2 sack fumbles, and Washington lost at Arrowhead because of Jared Allen. And you just can't have him go ham. Whatever that takes, if that means a tight end's extra staying in on him all day, I don't really care. Someone else is going to have to beat me. By the way, the fact that he's 6'7", you just mentioned that. The way he moves, that's insane to me. I didn't even realize he was that tall. If you would have said how tall is he, I would have guessed 6'4", maybe 6'5", because he's huge. But 6'7" is crazy to me. And everyone listening now is doing their 2-hand 6'7" thing. Yeah. All right, next we will get to the Lions offense against the Commanders defense. We're previewing Sunday's game. No longer the nationally televised 425 window game. Fox has changed up their broadcast crews. So the Commanders will have Kenny Albert, your boy from preseason football in the past, on the call, which will be cool. That's nostalgic for me, going back to Kenny Albert calling some 1 o'clock Sunday Commanders games in the 4 o'clock window. You're listening to Take Command. Welcome back to Take Command. We're previewing the Lions and the Commanders. Washington trying to stop a 4-game skid, and if they do it, they will pull off a stunner. The Lions have been installed as 8.5-point favorites to open the week. We'll see what the line ends at, but the Commanders have their work cut out for them, as Logan was just dissecting. We were talking about the side of the ball, frankly, where while the Lions are playing better defensively, generally you worry about a lot less with this team. Let's get to Washington's defense on the field with the Detroit offense. And it's a tale of two stories here. The Lions are a top 10 unit. They've been one of the most feared offenses in the sport over the last few years. Washington's defense was a victim of 4 touchdown drives on 4 possessions to start their game against Seattle. One change being made here. We talked about it on the last pod. Joe Witt's coming out of the booth down onto the sideline. Otherwise, it's kind of the status quo. Really good news, though, Logan. Frankie Louvu is going to play in this game.
Oh,
he was
nice.
originally, he was suspended by the league for a game. He appealed. He won his appeal, so they've reduced it to just a $100,000 fine. And Frankie Louvu will be playing in this game. Now, we could have a longer conversation about a $100,000 fine for tackles in a football game, and I would like to do that because I still think that's absurd. But I get it. Hip drop tackles, they're illegal. Yep. They want him out of the game. I think one of them was iffy. I can have my own opinions about how annoying that is, but I sure as hell like that. It's not my money. It's Frankie Louvu's, and he's paying a fine, and he's going to play on Sunday. So sucks for him, and I wish he didn't have to pay it, but I'll bet you he'd rather pay $100K than miss a football game.
Yeah, I'm happy. That's great news that he's back because I think you're going to need him in this football game. Like he's been playing better the last couple of weeks, and I think his leadership and his energy are going to be really, really impactful. So glad to hear that because I was a little bit concerned. Obviously missing some key pieces on the defensive line, missing some key pieces in the secondary because of injury, and if he wasn't going to play, that was going to be very, very challenging to deal with. So really happy that he's back out there, ready to play some football.
So let's look at the Lions. This is an offense that, while they're really good, I know you said on the last pod, you don't see them as maybe as consistently prolific as they've been in the past.
Yeah.
And so I dove in on some of those numbers, and they're down 6 spots in ranking from 6.2 per play to 5.7. They're down 5 spots running the ball. As a passing unit, last year they were throwing for over 8 yards per play. This year it's sub 7.5. Down 5 spots there as well. Goff was averaging over 270 per game. Now it's 233. There's not much of a debate. It's still really good, but it's not quite what it was.
Yeah, it's not quite what it was, and I do think, some of those stats are inflated by the Bears game, like where they just absolutely went Richter. And so I think if you take that, I haven't done it yet, but if you take that game out, it feels much more pedestrian's not the right word, much more normal, much more normal in terms of how efficient, how effective they've been.
Let me give you a number on that real quick, just to back up your point before you go forward. So DVOA with the Bears game, they're 8th in the NFL, which is one of my favorite stats. Aaron Schatz, Football Outsiders, created it. Yeah. Basically accounts for as many variables and waters down the playing field to even as possible. If you take that game out, they're 14th. They fall
That's crazy.
Basically 6 spots in DVOA on the season based on that one game. So your observation is completely correct.
Yeah, I mean, that's I didn't think it was going to be that dramatic, but that is a big difference. And so I think it just speaks to, like, when you watch down to down. Now, they played some good football teams, good defenses the last couple of weeks, but when you watch down to down, like, for example, last year when you watch them, like, their first and second down rushing efficiency was absolutely diabolical. Like, you just be like, that's anytime they handed the ball off to Jahmyr Gibbs or to Montgomery, it was going to be a 5-yard gain. And then they would just bleed you and punch you in the face, and they'd hit this explosive shot down the field, or they'd kind of find a way to kind of, Jahmyr Gibbs, and he crank one out, or Montgomery would crank a 40-yard run out, and you're just like, gosh, like, how do you contend with this? I do think their down-to-down efficiencies become a little bit less consistent. People say, oh, well, Jahmyr Gibbs is rushing for 4.9 yards a carry. He had a monstrous run. I think it was about 75 yards versus Tampa Bay that has kind of bumped up that average a little bit. And I think when you look at Montgomery, too, versus Baltimore, he had I want to say it was like a 68-yard run and then a 45-yard run, something like that, late in that game, where, again, those averages are inflated by these explosive runs. Now, that's why they're doing it. They're running because they know they have explosive playmakers. But the down-to-down consistency is, to me, wavered significantly. So what does that do? It puts you in more third and longs. It forces Jared Goff to do more. And Jared Goff, I think, is playing really good football. But then you see some of the cracks in their roster construction. This happens to every single team. You feel it with Philly a little bit right now as well. When you look at their guards, they got Tate Rowledge, who's a rookie, who I think is going to be an absolute stud, but he is not playing as well as the guy that was there last year. Graham Glasgow, who was the backup last year, is now the starter because their center retired, not playing as well. And then I can't even say the other guard's name, number 74. He is struggling big time to me. And so when you get those three guys on the interior not playing their best football, you're kind of like, that's where the deficiency comes in. Instead of creating this great movement, running guys off the ball, creating seams for Gibbs and Montgomery, the backs have to be a little bit more creative. And I think that's on first down. And then on third down, that's how you feel the pocket kind of collapsing. You feel it kind of constricting around Goff, and he does a great job standing in there and throwing the football. But like you mentioned this before, he's not going anywhere. He is feet in concrete at the top of his drop, and we are delivering strikes. Now, they've got enough playmakers on the perimeter to make it go, but you've seen teams get after them a little bit. I think the most recent one being the Minnesota Vikings, with internal pressure on first down, lots of cross dogs, internal pressure on third down, again, attacking that kind of interior trio. And it really was too much for Goff and that offense to handle. So while they're still good, they're definitely not as efficient as they were last year. And that lack of efficiency comes to the forefront in terms of, I think, some of the offensive numbers they're putting out.
So a couple of things. Their offensive line is ravaged by injury right now. This is a really good week to play the Lions. And I know people will roll their eyes at that, but you want that. I mean, that's what you're looking for, right? You mentioned, I think, number 74, the guard, who's Coyote Owoshika, I believe is how you say his name.
Killed it.
Thank you. He is a backup who has not started any games, who will now start starting, who really struggled, to your point, this past week because their starting guard got hurt, is out for an extended period of time. So you're going to see him in this game because Mahogany got hurt. On both tackle spots, Taylor Decker is hurt. Penei Sewell is one of the best right tackles, maybe the best right tackle in the league other than, I don't know, maybe him and Lane with the Eagles.
Lane is, I mean, like Penei Sewell on first, second down, there's not a better tackle in football. Like his ability to run and create space, drive people off the football, sink his hips is amazing. He falters a little bit as a pass protector, and that's where I'd give the edge to Lane. But in terms of first and second down player, like he is fantastic. He's if you want to cut on some film and say, how do you run block at right tackle, go no further than Penei Sewell, man. He is
really. You think he's number one?
Oh, in terms of run blocking, it's not even close. But Lane Johnson is an absolute stud and pass pro, and like you got to, if you want to make money and get paid in the NFL, you got to pass protect. And so maybe it's like 3 slots down, you got Sewell when it's overall ranking, but first and second down, man, like he does some absolutely amazing things in terms of movement, getting on double teams. It's incredible.
But look at this possibility. Maybe you're without 2 tackles and a guard. And that's you already talked about it. Their guard play this year has been a big problem for them as it was. And you're getting worse there, theoretically, tapping into your bench. So if you're Washington, I think, I'm such a proponent of the Shanahan philosophy of it's not who you play, it's when you play them. Like, let's get after them a little bit up front. Yeah. Let's run some games. Let's rush. By the way, I would blitz from the interior. Bobby Wagner, having Frankie Louvu, I think, is a huge deal. Now he's basically playing edge. But as much as I called for that, this might be a game where occasionally you put him at the second level and let him get some speed and come downhill, because Jahmyr Gibbs gave up 7 pressures on like 16 pass blocks last week, which was the worst game a running back has had statistically all season. If they're susceptible and weak in the interior, it's not like they got a quarterback like Washington has with Jaden or Marcus where he's moving around and getting away from the rush. If you get near Jared Goff, he's going to the ground. I mean, he's exceptional in a lot of things. Nobody better thrown in the middle of the field at times. He's pinpoint with his accuracy. There's like some Cousins elements to him to me. But like if you get near him, he's not getting away from you, right? Yeah. So this to me is a turn up the heat game for Joe Witt a little bit, the way that it looks like they're going to be dinged up front.
Yeah, and I think like we talked about at the top of the show, like this is a mouthpiece, wrist tape, neck roll type of game. And when you look at what Minnesota did, they didn't do anything that I haven't seen the Commanders do, to be quite honest, on first down. Like maybe they ran more true cross dog, but like they run the Commanders run like a lot of.
Explain cross dog for people.
So like you take the 2 middle linebackers and you basically stunt them over the top of the center. So you have like a true nose. You kind of run some type of stunt where those 3 people are playing kind of like some type of pick pull type of game. You have 3 techniques or 4 eyes. They're going to play to 5 techniques. And I will say this, like they executed those looks really well, Minnesota, but they were just more physical. Like they were just more physical than the Detroit Lions, right? You get defensive ends like knocking tight ends back. You guys get set in hard edges, not letting that thing contain, letting those linebackers work on the interior. And so, like, I've seen the Commanders, like I went back and watched the Chargers game last night. They've run like not cross dogs, but single dog, and they stunt the line. Think about Kinlaw in that game against the Chargers where he's constantly like getting TFLs or being disruptive in the backfield. We have that pitch. It's just, can we execute it in a physical, violent manner versus a physical, violent football team? And I think that's where like the mindset of this game is so critical. It's like you've seen the roadmap. You've seen teams get after them, like physically get after them, like Minnesota being one. I thought Tampa Bay did a great job in the first half before that Jahmyr Gibbs explosive run. Like, but they have a different personnel, and they were very physical in the front. So can you bring that same level of physicality? Because again, like it's
what did they do? Did they just park Vita Vea and basically?
Vita Vea is a monster. Yeah,
he's a beast.
And then they pressure a lot too, right? They do a little bit of line movement. They pressure and when you have a team that we've talked about this, like with the Commanders, like when you get a lot of run stunts, when you got a lot of run pressures, like you better know what to do. And you can see again some of the deficiency on the interior in terms of getting those things combinationed and targeted correctly. Like last year, they had a bunch of older war daddies in there, right? Guys that were just physical football players that played a lot of football. I think Zeitler was the guard. He's one of my favorite guards in the NFL, right? Like that just knew what to do in those looks. And now you're getting a bunch of guys who are learning on the job, and it's less efficient. So can you do it? I mean, the Commanders have shown they can do it, but like, can you bring that level of physicality on first and second down in this game? Because like you said, if you get them in a 3rd, 6, 3rd and 7, it's not a Sam Darnold offense, right? The pockets are collapsing. Like they don't have a bunch of great pass protectors in this offense because they're designed to run the football. So can you exploit that? And I really believe like you can. You just got to play a physical, violent brand of football, in this football game.
The best thing in the world for you in your new career here has to be that you don't ever have to deal with Vita Vea. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a guy like that where you're coming across the line of scrimmage and there's just a collision with a dude like Vita Vea. Like whatever you miss about football, as long as you remember that, you're probably okay not doing it anymore.
I'd tell you, sometimes I'm watching some of these edge players, like some of these bigger, like Minnesota has this edge player who's like built like a fire hydrant. He's like 6'1", like 295, like just a big old stocky son of a gun. And Sam Laporta had a little drive block on him, and this guy just helmet, just take that middle stripe right there, put it right in Sam Laporta's face. Sam Laporta's head snaps back, get the long arm, get thrown over a pile. And I was like, you know what? I don't need that in my life anymore. I don't need that level of physical trauma. And so every once in a while you see something and you're like, man, I love watching ball. I love watching ball, but I don't love that. I don't love that anymore. So
Vita Vea is like no one should be that big and be able to move like that guy. He's one of my favorite players in the league to watch. Like he's crazy.
I know we're going to take a little digression here, but every once in a while, like I think back to the athletes that I saw in the NFL, and just there are certain dudes that in a land of freaks, of just some of the freakiest dudes you'll see, a dude will walk into a room and you'll be like, that dude is a different cut. Like on the field of battle, he's the one you send out first. And like, he's just in this room of dudes that are all alphas. Like people kind of tuck tail and turn away when he walks in the room. And, Trent Williams was like that. Julio Jones was like that. I'm sure Vita Vea has a little bit of that same gravitas to him when he walks around in the room.
No doubt. All right, so then to put a bow on the Detroit conversation, I guess it'd be remiss if we didn't at least acknowledge some of the playmakers. So obviously, if they hold up in pro, and this is where they're going to have to do, a pretty good job of buying some time. Johnny Morton, their OC, replacing Ben Johnson this year, has done a really nice job, I think, in his first year. But if they can hold up, like the matchup of Amon-Ra St. Brown in the slot on Washington's DBs feels like a major problem. Otherwise,
slot, perimeter, like wherever you want.
They move them all over. That's true.
He's Jackson Smith and Jigba before Jackson Smith and Jigba. Like that's like that hyper technical physical route runner. Like, dude's a stud, man. Like,
He's
and I know
great.
he doesn't get a lot. And so, yeah, in terms of matchups, like, this is one of those ones where it's like, who's going to win versus man coverage? Like, how do you handle a guy who runs routes the way he does is going to be, especially after seeing what Jackson Smith and Jigba did to some of our defensive backs last week.
So last week you basically said something along the lines of like Smith and Jigba's going to get his, like that's going to happen. And I file St. Brown into that same category.
Correct. Yeah.
Like it's going to be 7 for 105, 110, 115. It can't be 157. It can't be 164, but like he's going to catch 7-8 balls. He's going to go for 100 yards. My concern, Grant Witt over here, the way we play is, the way we live is not for everybody, or whatever the big quote was, is two other guys.
Great quote, by the way. Great quote.
That is a great quote. Ball, because the ball is life. Jamison Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs and that speed. So JMO is interesting because they don't consistently involve him, and I don't really understand why he goes like 3 weeks without being involved. But he's petrifying. And then Gibbs did whatever he wanted against this team in the NFC playoff game, and thank God Ben Johnson stopped giving him the ball. I know they haven't been as explosive with him, but to me, if you get him out on the edges, I don't know how Washington stops that in this game. So help me with either of those two things.
Dude, that's the thing about this team is like, yeah, Amon-Ra St. Brown is going to get his. With Seattle, it was like there is Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then there wasn't like really a guy that killed you, right? Like you weren't like, oh, damn, like that guy. Like Jamison Williams has got to be the fastest dude in the NFL now that Tyreek Hill's hurt. Like there's a play versus quarters versus the Bears where he literally runs straight and the safety is 12 yards off the ball. And he just runs by him like he's standing still. And you're like, I don't know how you cover that. Like that, you're in quarters coverage. Like when your eyes, when one goes vertical after two goes out, your eyes go right to him and he just runs right by you for a 40-yard touchdown over the top, right? And so that's terrifying because like that's something that the Commanders have an issue with, right? And Jahmyr Gibbs, like while he's not been super efficient, quote unquote, like there was a play versus Green Bay where it's completely dead on an outside zone, and then he turns his shoulders to the right, parallel to the sideline, sprints as fast as he can, outruns the whole defense, and runs forward for 10 yards. You want to see something terrifying? Go watch the Tampa Bay game when he rips off that 75-yarder. He ran almost 23 miles an hour on that play. Like there is explosiveness in this offense. And that's just talking about those two guys, right? We haven't even talked about Sam Laporta, who's explosive at like maybe one of the more explosive tight ends at the position, right? And then you got Isla Tisla, who has been this explosive flashpoint for them, who runs a 4.4. He's 6'5", and you're just like, so unlike Seattle, where there wasn't all this dynamism outside of Jackson Smith and Jigba, this offensive skill position group is like, holy cow, like what are we going to do? So to me, it just becomes that much more important on first down to be like, let's get you in third and long as much as we can and try to get home with some 5-man pressures. And because they're going to complete the football, like, and it just depends on how well you tackle and make sure no one gets behind you in terms of defensive structure.
Well, that was the key for the Vikings last week. The Lions faced 17 third downs, which I don't ever remember seeing a team have that many third downs in a game. But it tells you they weren't getting a lot of first downs on first and second. And also 12 times they got them off the field because there were a lot of third and longs. And so you're wondering what's going on with the offense. They don't quite look right. Well, they're in 3rd and 9, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. And there were some big pressures and some sacks and a couple of things. And Washington's going to have to find those. But, yeah, maybe it's a penalty that puts them behind the chains. But when you get them in 2nd and a mile, where Washington has been abysmal, frankly, this season, like you've got to make a play. You can't give up 15 on 2nd and 22. You can't get them back into 3rd and manageable. Like, it's okay every now and then when it's 2nd and a mile to make it 3rd and a mile. Like they're due for a couple of incompletions or a drop on one of those to end a drive. Hopefully this week is the week. All right, next we'll try to figure out who Logan thinks is going to eat for Washington against the Lions on both sides of the ball. You're listening to Take Command. Back on Take Command, Logan Paulsen and Grant Paulsen. This pick segment is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. I'm looking at the Lions Commanders this weekend, Sunday at Northwest Stadium, and I'm seeing a total in the game of 49.5 points, and I'm going to take the over on 49.5 points in this game. Now, this could sting me. That's a high total, obviously, but I think Detroit is going to put up a bunch of points. I think Washington is going to have an opportunity as the game goes on and things open up, possibly chasing the game a little bit to score as well. So I'll go over 49.5. I think there's going to be opportunities for both teams to hit on some explosives. That is your pick segment brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Make every moment more. Logan, offensively for Washington, who do you like in the matchup?
So this is maybe a little bit of a cop-out, but in order for them to win this football game, Cliff Kingsbury has to eat. Like, he has to eat. Like, we talked about the schematic elevation that's going to need to happen in this game to kind of put people in position where they can win versus man-to-man coverage, and that falls on him almost entirely. So, I could have said Bill Krosky-Merritt or Chris Rodriguez because both those guys have to run the football effectively and be physical downhill. But to me, that's more of a blocking surface thing, like how well does the offensive line and tight ends play for that to happen. But I think that all goes back, to the North Star, which is Cliff. Like, can you put these guys in the best position to be successful? And it's not fair. A lot of guys are hurt. A lot of change is going to need to happen here, I think, offensively. But, Cliff's a smart dude and he wants to win games, so I think he's going to get it done.
Offensively, when I look at the Lions, I see a team that is softest probably on the direct interior. So I'm going to go off the board here a little bit and say Chris Rodriguez.
Like it.
I think Bill gets the early touches and probably does some okay things, maybe to the exterior. But when they get downhill and powerful, it's been a lot more Rodriguez here the last couple of weeks, certainly this past week. And I could see them not trying to mess around and just, let's go right at these D tackles and see what they do. And maybe it's, a few carries in the first half for 7, 9, 10 yards. Next thing you know, he has 10 to 12 in the game for 60 yards.
I think that's a great point. I do think, like, one of the things that I went back and watched the Giants game, I do think there is something to be said for putting the big body out there first and kind of softening the defense up a little bit, because he is going to get downhill. He's going to get you 4, it's not like these explosive plays. But then when, Bill Krosky-Merritt came in later in the game, like, people were moving off the spot, like there was a little bit more space and he's able to maximize it. So I actually like that call out quite a bit, because I do think versus this defense, like, let's get downhill. Let's not get too fancy. Let's get what's there. Let's try to stay on schedule best we can. And, like, I think we don't know if we mentioned this, but I talked to you about this maybe before the show started. Like, for Detroit, I actually think Montgomery is a more efficient down-to-down runner, and Gibbs is a better supplemental piece. It's hard to take him off the field because of how explosive Gibbs is. I kind of feel like there is a little bit of that here right now. Get him see right on the field, keep your efficiency up, and then when you need that explosive chunk, hopefully Bill Krosky-Merritt's ready to rock and roll.
How about defensively? Pick the click.
I mean, again, like, we've talked about the interior of this group a ton, like, Payne, Allen, and I really believe that the spine of this defense needs to play out of their minds tomorrow, right? So the spine of the defense would be, Kinlaw, Payne, Bobby, Frankie, if he's playing in the line like you're talking about, and then the safeties, Quan specifically, and Jeremy Reeves. Like, those 6 guys down the spine of that group just need to be ready to rock and roll, man. Like, you got to be physical on first down. You got to be ready to cover in the back end. Like, they have to play well. And I think, again, that's 6 people that I'm talking about. But in terms of, like, how Detroit wants to attack you, like, those guys need to play really well. They need to fit runs correctly. They need to own their gaps, because that's how they're going to win this football game if they do those things.
I think both linebackers get a sack in this game. I think you see a sack from Bobby Wagner, and if it's McGee off the ball and not Luvu, maybe it's him getting his first of the season. But Luvu with a little added juice this week after thinking he was out, now coming back, I could definitely see him having a loud performance as well. All right, Logan, next time we chat will be post-game at Northwest Stadium, hopefully after a win to end this skid. Washington trying to get back on the good foot after losing 4 in a row. It was fun, man. We'll do it again soon.
Yeah, man, always a pleasure.
Take command with Logan Paulsen, Grant Paulsen. Spread the word. Send this pod to some of your friends who haven't listened before. We would love that. You can watch us. Every episode's on 106.7 The Fan, Team 980 YouTube channels, and subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your audio. Our producer is Evan O'Brien. We appreciate him. Thanks for listening to Take Command.